Let's look at Buddy's solo work, what he did record for solo steel guitar albums. Some of it is amazing. In 1963, he puts out his first instrumental album. It's called Steel Guitar Jazz. Now, this record, for me, it's not so much. The recording, the arrangements, the instrumentation, I'm not really that crazy about this album. This album came out many, many times throughout the years on different labels, different issues of it. But that's a record that you might start with that one if you want to really go through his whole catalog. A couple years later, he puts out the steel guitar and dobro sounds of Shot Jackson and Buddy Emmons. That is a great record. It did come out, there's an issue of it on Starday, the infamous country label. You can hear a lot about that label on the Cocaine and Rhinestones podcast. And they did put out another duet album, which is also good, but this one is great. This is a really killer album. It's just got that great era. I mean, 1965, you probably can't find a better time in country music history than 1962 to 1970. That is the sweet spot for classic country music and for the studio. Everything was still analog, but it was a little more hi-fi, a little more three-dimensional than the 50s sort of barn dance kind of honky-tonk music that was coming out at that time. A couple years later, we've got Emmons Guitar Incorporated. Now, this one has got the coolest cover of any Buddy Emmons record. I think you can agree that is just a killer album cover. He's got that slowed down version of Danny Boy on here, and I still say the Troubadours version is the one. That's the one you gotta have. But he does that. A lot of other stuff. Raisin' the Dickens is a great instrumental that Buddy wrote with Jimmy Dickens, and that's probably the standout track for me on this album. 1975, he puts out a record on Flying Fish that's called Steel Guitar. And this is great. There's a lot of fiddle tunes on here. So if you want to hear the kind of the layers and different dimensions of Buddy's playing, you can hear him playing what I think are a bunch of fiddle tunes, basically. And this is a hot record. Definitely a record to have. If you can get a copy of any of this stuff on vinyl, absolutely. There's another album that came out called Four Wheel Drive, which is a compilation album. That's got a lot of Texas Troubadours stuff on it, if I remember correctly. And then in 76, he has his big singing debut with Buddy Emmons Sings Bob Wills, Flying Fish. If you don't know about Flying Fish, that was just a great alt-country record label in the 1970s and 80s that put out a lot of really, really interesting records. I have a lot of their stuff on vinyl. In fact, my favorite steel guitar record of all time is a Flying Fish record, which we're going to talk about in a future episode. He puts out one called International Steel Guitar Convention, Volume 1, and the mix is just a bit off on this one. The band plays their guts out, but the production is just not there for me on this one. Buddy Spicher and Buddy Emmons, 1977 on Flying Fish, absolutely yes. This album could stand to be reissued on vinyl. I think some boutique label should remaster this thing for vinyl and put out a reissue of it, because this is a killer album that will at some point just be forgotten about here in the next 10, 20 years. So the next one to talk about is what has to be the greatest concept for an album. I mean, on paper, I can't think of a better album. Buddy Emmons with Lenny Breau, Miners Aloud. I mean, this album should kill. The vibe just wasn't really there for me on this record. At this point in his career, Lenny was using a lot of drugs, and he could be like kind of hit or miss in the studio. Buddy was also kind of in the start of his sort of wild side of his life off stage too. So for whatever reason, this record just doesn't really come together the way that it should. But it's an album that is probably worth having if you're a collector, just for the fact that it's Buddy Emmons and Lenny Breau. So this next album, One for the Road, 1982. I would love to know, for Buddy Emmons fans, what's your opinion about this record, One for the Road? For me, this is the greatest Buddy Emmons instrumental album that he put out. This is a pretty rare record. To find this on vinyl might be a bit of a chore, but you got to have this in your collection. This is Buddy Emmons, One for the Road. It's kind of a sleeper if you look at the cover. It's a hidden gem. It doesn't look like much. The creativity of Buddy Emmons has never been on display, and as much for me as it is here on an instrumental album that he put out. This album might not be the one for hardcore country fans, but if you're into experimental alt country, swing, jazzy stuff, this album absolutely kills from front to back. And takes us through the 1980s. In the 1990s, he teams up with Ray Eddington. They put out a bunch of records. This country swing concept. Production is kind of nasty because we're in the Peavy era of classic country music. It's that 90s awkward kind of era. It's just the production is not really there, but of course there's so much stuff already that we've talked about to listen to. And of course we got to come back to the huge catalog of steel guitar work that Buddy had recording with other artists in session on their albums. In 1997, there was a compilation that came out on the label Razor and Tie, and it's called The Amazing Steel Guitar, the Buddy Emmons Collection. It's got a really cool album cover, File Under Country, it says. And these are the highlights of some of the stuff that he did with the Troubadours, the Country Boys. And yeah, it's a really cool collection of stuff. And if you're collecting CDs, that'd be a CD that you could definitely pick up. So here's a video of Buddy playing in Japan, which I can't really describe for you. I think you just have to watch it and see for yourself. It's pretty amazing. Okay, well, that's enough of that. You can see Buddy playing with Ray Price on YouTube, the Buddy Emmons tribute. That was done by the Country Family Reunion. There's a bootleg copy of that on YouTube you can watch. There's a video clip called Buddy Emmons on His Best, SS Cool. Let's take a look at that. This is Buddy playing at breakneck speed. They got the PV amps all over the stage. It's pretty amazing. Here we go. I want 2, 3, 4, 1. There's another great clip of him playing Raisin' the Dickens from another kind of camcorder recording from the 80s. Here it is. It's not such a nice instrument anyway, but... Here's an older clip of Buddy playing in black and white with Jimmy Dickens, and you can hear Buddy playing some real country western E9 stuff here.
She tries harder today, so don't blame me like that way. Been walked on and stepped on. So
what a different Buddy Emmons we're seeing there. You can see this sort of young, nervous, sort of socially, well, not socially, but you see sort of an anxious body language of Buddy Emmons there playing. And I think that he did have a lot of sort of social anxiety about playing in studio and on stage, at least as documented by Steve Fishell, his unofficial, well, his official now biographer. One of the takeaways for me about Buddy and his whole career, his legacy, is how on stage he looked like such the cool guy, right? He had all the rings. He was very flashy. His playing was flashy. His style, his body language was extremely confident and gregarious. But you can see in that clip that we just saw of him playing with little Jimmy Dickens, I think the real Buddy Emmons, who underneath of all of it, who he was, because it did seem that he was certainly someone who had depression in his life, had anxiety, in a world and at a time where it was not convenient to talk about those kind of things publicly or disclose of them in any way. You can see it. You can see it in a lot of the video footage of him from the 90s and 2000s. You can see in interviews, you can see that he was someone who certainly had his battles and had his sort of own personal darkness, whatever that was. And that's always something that really struck me about Buddy. Was we talk about in this video, who was he musically, but I don't know that we can ever really know who he was personally off stage. But if you would like to know more about Buddy Emmons, his whole life story, you should consider checking out the biography that just came out in 2022. And he was just on the Otis Gibbs YouTube channel recently, doing a great interview talking about the book, but really telling some fun stories, Buddy Emmons stories. And you can get a little glimpse and a little feel in that video for the kind of things that I'm hinting at here in the last couple of minutes. So all in all, this has been part of the story and celebration of Buddy Emmons here in this steel guitar spotlight. He passed away in 2015 from a heart attack. His wife passed away a few years before him. I think the last 5 or 6 years of his life were probably quite difficult in lieu of that. He had a number of children. Most of them are still alive. And will his legacy ever be met? Will it ever be matched or broken? I don't think possible, really, because the guitar is not going to go through further evolutionary changes in terms of what the physical steel guitar is, the double neck or single neck pedal steel guitar. So I don't think it's possible that in the country western field and in the jazz world that there'll ever be another Buddy Emmons. It's just kind of one of these rare moments and these rare occasions where it's so unlikely that his legacy and his body of work could ever be matched. Now, if there is someone in the steel guitar world who's done a pretty good job of that, it's probably Robert Randolph, who is very much outside of the country western field, and he plays the steel guitar in a very different style, but he's brought a new generation of eyes and ears and exposure to the steel guitar in a way that's, as I say, completely outside of the country western field altogether. So that would be about the only person that we have alive today who's doing anything parallel to the magnitude that Buddy Emmons did for the steel guitar. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and if you like content like this featuring the steel guitar and the topic of classic country music, classic honky-tonk country music, 60s, 70s, if you like that kind of thing, consider subscribing to the channel, leaving a comment, and most importantly, subscribing, because there's going to be a lot more talk about steel guitar in the future, a lot more talk about classic country music. That's why I made the iHonky-Tonk channel. Thanks for watching, and go enjoy Buddy Emmons. Enjoy him on vinyl record or on YouTube music or wherever else you can. Keep it country, keep coming back, and we'll see you next time.